How do you choose the right hair system for you? That's the question of all ages. Today we're going to be talking about hair systems, how to pick the best one for you, and all the factors that you really got to consider. Now, right up front, there's three different things really that you have to look at when you're considering what hair system is right for you. Off the front of this, we're going to be talking about hair system bases. We're going to be talking about the hair that's inside of the hair system specifically. And then, of course, the knots, which is how the hair system, how the hair itself is tied into a hair system. So let's first talk about that structure, right? So the way the hair systems work is there is first a base, a material, right? Now this can be a couple different things, and we'll talk about those soon. But what happens is that in most cases, each hair system has hair that is either synthetic or human hair that is actually knotted by a human, hand knotted into a system. That's thousands of knots, and that's crazy to think about. So that is the base structure of everything that we're going to be looking at today. Now, the first part of it, let's start with the base, because the base itself is going to have one of the greatest differentiators of performance, of quality, of all of these different things. So here's what we need to know. There is a couple different forms of bases, and one is probably the newest type, which is a polyurethane or a skin type unit. You might hear some people say a thin skin. And what this is it's polyurethane, which means it's a form of plastic, right? That acts as like a form of skin that the hair is injected or it is looped into the system. Because of this, because it's a polyurethane, there's no ventilation. So imagine having I don't want to say this, not a plastic bag, but imagine having a second layer of skin on top of you. That is bonded to your scalp, and there is no ventilation in between the scalp itself and the exterior world, right? So it can get very hot. Now, what are the good things about this? It's thin, right? And generally they can be pigmented, these polyurethanes. They match skin tones, which is great, so it makes it look believable. Adhesives are easy to place on this polyurethane. They're relatively comfortable, but not if you don't have great ventilation. Some report a floating sensation above the scalp. You know, it feels like it isn't quite to your scalp. And while they can create a great hairline, it's not going to be the absolute best, which we'll talk about in a second. And they range in a variety of thicknesses. And of course, the thinner they are, the more believable the hairline, the less obtrusive they are. But on the other side of the coin, they are going to be less durable, right? So then the other types of units that you will see, they're all made of mesh. Let's get that out of the way. So there's a Swiss lace, there is a French lace, and then there is a monofilament. Now, a Swiss lace is going to be the most comfortable, breathable, but least durable out of all of these. This is going to be the thinnest of all of the lace systems. So imagine a like fishing net, a very, very tight fishing net, and all of the hairs are looped into it. They're knotted into this lace unit. That is different than how it works inside of a polyurethane, right? Because it's a different base. That's either injected or it's looped. So with the mesh, remember, we're dealing with knotted. Now, a French lace is going to be thicker. It's going to have more layers, 3 layers, with a Swiss lace in the middle of it. And what these do is they have more durability. Of course, they are a little less comfortable, and the hairline is not as believable as a Swiss lace. So a lot of people say that if you're going to have an exposed hairline, you want to either go with the poly unit or a Swiss lace. An exposed hairline, of course, means that you're going to have it swept back. We're not talking about things that are like if you have shorter hair and it's kind of like it comes forward a little bit. I was always using a forward sweeping hairstyle. I don't have a unit on right now because of the pandemic. I'm going to be getting one on though after. So you'll be seeing that soon. Now the last is a monotype base, which is once again, this is a mesh base, but it is thicker. It's light. and it is very durable, has a long lifespan, but this is not something that you want to be going for if you want that believable hairline. So there's this constant axis, right? It's like a X and Y chart of durability with believability, if you will, right? So there is this axis of this unit is way more believable looking, but it's less durable. And so that right there is, of course, your very, very, very fine, like 0.3 millimeter poly units and your Swiss lace. And then on the other end of the spectrum, which is very durable, but not exactly believable, is these monofilament bases. So that's something that you're going to want to look at. Now, the next thing that you're going to want to look at is the type of hair that is inside of your unit. So the first thing to talk about is we talk about natural human hair that is used inside of these units. So it is coming from a human, or the fact that we're talking about synthetic hair. Synthetic hairs are they're very fine plastic filaments made of like this fibrous material that look and kind of feel like human hair, but guess what? It's not human hair, and it acts different. They're durable, but they're not great when exposed to heat. In general, though, this is like 99% of people, we're going to want to stay away from that option. We're going to want to go for the normal human hair. Now, let's break this down further, okay? So there are different types of human hair. There's, of course, Chinese hair, there's Indian hair, and, of course, European hair. Now, what each of these feature, as their name implies, is that they cater to those who have hair of that specific ethnicity or type of hair. So if you looked at my hair being of European descent versus someone with much coarser hair, such as Asian hair, you would notice that mine is actually, it's not quite as thick, right? If I was using Asian hair with my European hair, the texture and the sheen and all of this stuff would not look correct. So this is something that you have to take into consider when you're finding a use. You need to know what your hair is. Is your hair fine? Is it really coarse? Like, what is the, does it have a body wave? Does it have is it curly? Is it purely straight? This is all really important information for you to consider as you are getting and picking a hair system. Now, if you're going to be using a stylist or a hair club, this is information that they might have for you as a professional. So this is a great way to find out that information. Now, lastly, the thing that I want to talk about is knots. And what this is really talking about is the way that hair system units, so the bases, attach the hair themselves. So first, the one we're going to be talking about is hair injection. Now, this generally requires a thicker base, and what happens is that the hair is literally injected into the hair system unit, and it sits inside of that. It's not knotted underneath. It's not looped. It's the hair system goes one way and one way only, so it's very natural looking. Of course, the second way that hairs are attached to a base is through looping ventilation. So what happens here is the hair is looped down underneath the base of the unit, which is where your scalp is, and back up through the unit, and this is not as strong as a injection type unit, but of course the polyurethane layer can be much thinner because it's only requiring it to go down and back around, as opposed to injecting it into a intermediary layer inside of it. Now, when we're talking about lace units, there is the issue of knotting. There's a couple different types of knots that occur. So there's double, there's single, there's half knots, and then there's going to be something we talk about after. So a double knot is something that's ideal for thick hair system units with lots of weight and lots of volume. So you might think of like a very thick Asian hair unit that has like, it's very big. And the reason is that these bigger hair knots, it's double, right? It makes it difficult for hair to lay down flat. And because of that, it has that more like structured volume look to it. A single knot is exactly what that sounds like, as opposed to a double knot. It's a single knot, which allows the hair to fall much flatter. So this is something that you'd probably find inside of a European unit, correct? Now, once again, going down even a step further from the single knot is a half knot, which is even more undetectable than a single knot. And this is used for slick back hairstyles where there's going to be a lot of the skin showing. The last thing we want to talk about is bleached knots inside of hair system units. So what this means, right, is when our hair is naturally coming out of our scalp, it recedes into the hair or into our skin, and we can't see the bottom of the hair follicle, right? We just see the hair coming out. So what happens with hair system units, if there is not bleached knots, let's say that you have black hair and then you have a mesh unit at the base, right? Now, if you have black knots that are tied underneath the base, they're going to show and they're going to look a little bit different than the base itself, which is an unnatural look. And once again, everything inside of hair systems we're trying to do is make it undetectable. So with every system that you get, you're going to really look for bleached knots. The one drawback to this, though, is of course that it can weaken the hair knot and reduce its longevity because it doesn't have as much strength from the bleaching process chemically. So with all of these factors considered, remember what we're constantly doing is we are balancing durability with believability and of course cost, right? Because hair systems do cost money and we're trying to make them last, but we want them to look good. So this is something that we're always trying to balance the different factors in between. So having a little bit of awareness around what is the different types of bases, the different types of hairs, the different types of knots out there can get you the best bang for your buck, but as well make it also the most believable that is possible. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. We're going to be talking a little bit more about the specifics of each of these things, right? About the hair types, the base types, and the knots, as well as bonds in future videos where we'll go into a little bit more detail. But this is just to get you going, to realize that there's a couple different factors and to start asking questions. So if you have any, please leave them in the comments below, leave a like, subscribe, and we'll talk soon, all right?